When the gas chambers of Nazi Germany were discovered, when the industrialized mass murder of Jews was revealed to us, people across the world found themselves repeating two words: never again. Two simple words, a mantra, an important message, a promise that the world will never again let this happen, that it will never again stay silent about large-scale crimes against humanity. But 7 decades after the Holocaust, the world is doing the same. A new totalitarian state has emerged, a more powerful and ambitious regime than the Nazis. It has spread a deadly virus across the world and is undertaking a cultural and religious genocide at home. The world stands silent. The solemn pledge of never again, lost in history. Hello and welcome to Gravitas Plus. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay and I'm here to talk to you about the Uyghurs. The silence of the international community against their plight, especially those who claim to be defenders of the faith the Uyghurs belong to, the Muslims. Who are the Uyghurs? A Muslim minority group that lives in northwestern China. They're essentially Sunni Muslims of Turkic ethnicity, part Central Asian and part European. They embraced Islam around the 10th century. Prior to Islam, the Uyghurs had embraced Buddhism, shamanism, and Manichaeism. But they had managed to maintain their unique identity. They have their own language, their own culture, their own cuisine. They do not look Chinese. They do not want to feel Chinese. But they're forced to act Chinese. This is Xinjiang, the largest province in China, home to the Uyghur Muslims, roughly the size of Iran, 1.5 times the size of Pakistan, and 12 times the size of Bangladesh. Xinjiang borders 8 countries, most of which have Islam as the largest religion. But Xinjiang remains a part of atheist China. The People's Republic of China annexed this region in 1949. Mao Zedong took control of Xinjiang to prevent Russia from taking over. At this time, the Uyghur Muslims made up 76% of Xinjiang's population. The Han Chinese, the country's majority ethnic group, accounted for just 6%. Today, Xinjiang is made up of 42% Uyghurs and 40% Han Chinese. The Uyghurs have become victims of forced assimilation. Why? Because controlling Xinjiang is essential for the Chinese regime. It is the largest and strategically the most important region of China. It's at the heart of Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Initiative. You can say it's Beijing's gateway to Central Asia and Europe, the most telling example of the CCP's One China principle. But national unity is not the only thing at stake in Xinjiang. This land is overflowing with riches. China's largest reserves, 1/3 of its natural gas and oil reserves are located here. Xinjiang also contributes 60% of China's output of cotton and 38% of China's coal reserves. Billions of dollars are at stake, which is why Xinjiang is China's most militarized region. It is said that 1 in 3 Chinese living in Xinjiang works for the security forces, and 1 in 10 Uyghur Muslims living in Xinjiang is behind bars. A total of 10 million Muslims are said to live here. Almost 2 million are in jail, 2 million. Those who are not are under watch. They have to deal with the world's most sophisticated surveillance system on a daily basis. There is police on every corner of the street, checkpoints every few kilometers, and cameras that scan everything from number plates to faces to body parts. China says it's doing all of this to curb terrorism. The world says this is persecution. China sends these Muslims to concentration camps and calls them re-education camps, joyful training schools. The Chinese regime says it's correcting extremist behavior, but these camps, let me tell you, are places unlike anywhere on earth. The Muslims are subjected to political indoctrination. They're forced to memorize communist principles. Those who disobey are tortured. They face solitary confinement, deprivation of food, water, and sleep. They're released only when they succumb to beliefs and language of communist and atheist China. But a release does not mean that they're free. It means they're in an open jail. They cannot celebrate their festivals. They're forbidden from wearing their traditional dress. Women are not allowed to wear burqas. Young men are not allowed to keep beards. The Communist Party approves Friday sermons, the Chinese version of the Quran, even names of Uyghur children. Those who disobey are publicly shamed and sometimes publicly executed. And if you think that's bad, then wait till you hear this. China is looking for ways to shrink the Uyghur Muslim population. So these women are subjected to forced sterilization and abortion. They are victims of China's pair up and become family program. You have to hear what this is. Han Chinese men are assigned to monitor Muslim homes. They assist, they eat, and they work with Uyghur Muslim women, and sometimes they sleep in the same bed as them. This is state-sanctioned rape. The United Nations has called it one of the worst cases of human rights violations since World War II. But calling it so does not stop it. What has the United Nations done about it? What has the world done about it? They've raised concerns. In July 2019, 22 Western nations raised concerns about China's unspeakable atrocities in Xinjiang. 22 Western nations. Do you know what happened next? At least 37 countries recruited by China came up with a letter. They whitewashed China's crimes as counter-terrorism operations. And here is the most shocking part. 14 of these countries were Muslim-majority states, 14, all members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the OIC, a body which ironically claims to be the collective voice of the Muslim world. But when it comes to the Muslims of China, it acts as the collective defense of China. 5 OIC countries top this list. 5 countries that claim to be the defenders of the Muslim faith. Authoritarian regimes that should be shouting the loudest, but have bowed their heads in silence. Let me tell you the names in the order of the noise they make for Muslim solidarity. Saudi Arabia, Iran, Turkey, Malaysia, and Pakistan. These countries scream at the slightest insult to their religion and brethren, but they are willfully blind to China's unspeakable crimes against the Uyghurs. These countries cannot tolerate a novel with magical realism, but they can live with the mass sterilization of Muslim women in China. What explains their silence? Money. You see, among the nations that have agreed to be part of China's Belt and Road project, 30 are Islamic countries. China has become a key trade partner of almost every Muslim-majority nation, especially the ones I just mentioned, the leaders, the so-called leaders of the Islamic world, silent on the genocide of China's Muslims. Let's take this one at a time. I'll start with Saudi Arabia, the epicenter of the Islamic world, home to Islam's 2 holiest sites, the so-called defender of Muslim rights. These are titles it does not deserve, because Riyadh has chosen China's money over China's Muslims. China accounts for 1/10 of Saudi Arabia's oil exports. The kingdom depends on Chinese capital to finance the privatization of its oil industry. In 2017, Beijing and Riyadh signed deals worth $70 billion. In February 2019, the Saudi crown prince went to China. It was his first big foreign trip. He was asked about the Uyghur issue categorically. And do you know what he said? Let me quote. He said, China has the right to take anti-terrorism and de-extremism measures to safeguard national security. This is a torchbearer of Islam. Then we have Iran. The Iranian regime issued a death sentence against Salman Rushdie in 1989 because he wrote a satire on Islamic principles, the Satanic verses. What has Iran done about China's Muslims? Nothing. Ayatollah Khamenei claims to speak for the rights of Muslims everywhere. He has launched a Twitter account in several languages to reach out to them. He has one in Hindi as well, but not one in Mandarin. Why won't he speak to the Muslims of China? Because he's speaking to the government of China. China accounts for 1/3 of Iran's oil exports. Beijing is one of Tehran's biggest trading partners, and above everything, Iran needs China by its side to deal with the United States. It's business over religion. Next on the list is Turkey. Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He wants to act like an Islamic strongman. He aspires to be the new sultan, the new caliph of modern-day Muslim empires. He's converting museums into mosques. He claims to be undoing historical wrongs, but he won't speak up for China's Muslims, because Erdogan too needs China's money. He visited Beijing last summer to save his sinking economy. He welcomed Chinese investments. He gushed about China's sovereignty. And if Chinese Muslims are found in Turkey, Erdogan finds a way to send them back to China to be punished. Then we come to Malaysia, the country where this man is hiding. Malaysia did not hesitate in providing refuge to a radical televangelist. Malaysia went to the extent of ruining its relationship with India for Zakir Naik. Its former Prime Minister wanted to lead the Islamic world, but it will not lift a finger for the followers of Islam in China. Why? I asked this question to Dr. Mahathir bin Mohamad, the former Prime Minister, and this is what he told me.
Well, we would like to send him to some country where we feel he would be safe. Well, not to India, because at this moment, we feel that he would not be safe.
The hypocrisy is legendary, and I've not even got to the biggest hypocrite of them all. Pakistan and its Prime Minister, the one and only Imran Khan. He wants the entire world to fight for his cause. He has dedicated his political career to achieve the Kashmir dream. He often peddles lies about an imaginary genocide in Kashmir, but he feigns ignorance about China's Muslims.
What's your stance on China's treatment of Uyghur Muslims?
Frankly, I don't know much about that. If I had enough knowledge, I would speak about it.
I do not know the exact situation of this.
I would never talk about it in public. We talk to them privately. We don't make public statements. We do not talk about things with China in public right now because they're very sensitive. That's how they deal with issues.
Someone once rightly said, beggars cannot be protesters. We don't blame Pakistan. Politically incorrect, but it's about time. And what I'm about to say next may sound even more politically incorrect. If a Western country, or any country for that matter, were to display 1/10 or maybe 1/100th of the atrocity that China is inflicting on these Muslims, these same countries that I just mentioned would be burning with outrage. Saudi Arabia would have shut its oil taps. Iran would have issued death warrants. Malaysia would have called for a conference of Muslim nations. Turkey would be one step ahead. It would have called for a new world order, and Pakistan would be doing what it does best, training armies of terrorists to seek revenge. But they're not doing anything of this kind against China, because these countries, the world's leading Islamic countries, have their pockets filled with Chinese cash. The idea of Muslim solidarity is just a foreign policy tool for them. They use it when it suits them. Some of these countries challenge India's claims of sovereignty in Kashmir. They challenge India's claim of normalcy in Kashmir. So here's our challenge for them. Will they ever speak up for the Muslims of China? Will they ever call out China for the ethnic cleansing of the Uyghur Muslims? I already know the answer, but I'll still wait for the day when this challenge is accepted.